All right, good morning. I got 8 o'clock, so let's go ahead and get started. I don't plan to talk a whole lot today. I do want to just give you a little basics of why we do Chapter 3 when we talk about ratio analysis and some of those things. Some of the things that were important to me, probably in banking, and would be important to other people in different industries as well. A lot of ratios are particular to industry, so you got to kind of be a little bit careful as you go through those, and don't try to use them as apples to apples comparisons if you're talking about one company to another. And I'll show you one example maybe when we get to it a little bit. And I think it has to do maybe even with one of your questions that you're going to have. So I don't remember if that question's on there for sure. Kind of one heads up, when you get to Chapter 4, the videos that I've provided, the numbers that I say in the videos don't necessarily match up. The addition was a little bit different. The number that I have in Brightspace should match up with the number that you're doing, but then you might turn it on and it might have said that it was problem 4.6 and I say, oh, this is problem 4.12 or something like that. So pay attention to what I've typed in there, not what I say in the video itself, and they should match up okay. They took out some stuff, and I was glad they did. It was stuff that really wasn't that pertinent. I didn't find that it was something that people would have used a whole lot, and that's probably good. So, and then I'll also today, I'm going to give you just a little preview and get you started on our first project. Usually I'd wait for another week to do that, but since we're kind of condensed, we're gonna get started on that. Your first assignment's going to be really easy on that, just so you know. I know there's a way to make this bigger. Display settings, there we go. So the DuPont ratio analysis system, we never used that too much in banking, and I imagine that's probably for bigger companies. When I've analyzed bigger companies myself, I kind of so on some of it. I think some of the more basic terms for this level are probably more important. I think if you were in a master's level finance class, you'd probably get into the DuPont a little bit more. So here, you're going to do more of the regular financial analysis. You might get into a few things and look at what the DuPont is, but yeah, trends are always important. Used to use trends a lot. So profitability ratios, right? Profit margin, return on assets. That's typically not a big one in certain industries. In banking, that was always a big one. When we compared one bank to another, ROA was fairly consistent. Okay, and one of the reasons was capital ratios are fairly consistent in banking, and so ROA was a fairly consistent way to compare one bank to another. But to compare it to another business in another industry, just about impossible. Okay, or even to compare two businesses in the same industry, it might be just about impossible. To compare Amazon, say, which is in retail, to Costco, their ROAs may be just completely different, and yet they're both very profitable. Well, Amazon's also on their profitability, but they're sure a huge company. They just arrive at the end point in different ways sometimes, and that's what's important to look at. And then return on equity. I love return on equity. The reason I do that is because as an investor, equity means that's me. That's my investment in the company, right? And so it's what return that particular company is providing me, right? Okay, that's an important metric. So I've always liked that from an investment standpoint. Still important from a banking standpoint. Asset utilization, we used to look at these for a lot of retail things. Didn't fit much with farming and ranching, okay? But in terms of retail, how often is a company turning over their inventory? What I'll tell you is that in recent years, it has become far more regular. It's not because sales have improved that much, it's because of inventory control, right? And I've kind of mentioned that, back in my day, how we ordered things and it took weeks to get it, so you kept a big stock. And now you just keep a small stock because it's ordered automatically, comes in, 2 or 3 days later, it's back on the shelf, away you go. So inventory turnover's been enhanced quite a bit over the last couple of decades, really. And that's a huge thing. That means it's that much less money that you have to have invested in your inventory, right? So you can use that money for other things. Huge, huge, huge deal. Okay, collection period and receivable, those are big. We'll look at something in a minute about Dell, but there was a while when Dell Computers was first, and I think these are Dell computers we have, when they first kind of got going after the first few years, they were on average getting paid for their computers before they had to pay for the components. Okay, now how was that? Well, because they were the first company that really had either phone order or online orders only, right? So you'd call in, you'd order your computer, you'd pay for it, give them a credit card, right? They got paid, that money went into their account. They ordered all the components basically for it. They might have some in inventory, but they were getting 30 days to pay. Okay, it was a huge deal. I sat and calculated at one time, this was several years ago, but for the 1 year, it was a $54 million addition to their profit. Just that difference in the payables versus the receivables, huge. Okay, and so managing those types of things, again, those are things that financial managers tend to do. Liquidity, huge things for bankers. We always care about liquidity. Current ratios, what? Counting one, current ratio. Oh man, we're going to have a quiz. Might have a quiz on Thursday. Current ratio, current assets divided by current liabilities, right? Quick ratio, current assets minus inventory divided by current liabilities, okay? Those are important to know. You want to know how well a company is going to be able to pay their immediate bills, right? That's generally a big thing that keeps them in business, right? For the next 30 days, whatever the case may be, okay? It's a huge thing. The reason you do the quick ratio and take out inventory is because inventory is a little tougher to convert. You know, generally we say you'll convert inventory within a year easily. You should convert it way more often than that. But a lot of your other current assets, cash, marketable securities, those types of things, you can convert to cash just like that if it's not already cash, right? So that's why we take a look at those ratios, huge things. Debt, we used a lot of debt to asset types of ratios. Not so much times interest earned. What that means is how much above your interest payments that are going to be due for the year have you earned. So if your profit's $10 and your interest is $2, it's 5 times, right? You've made 5 times what your interest was. Fixed charge coverage, kind of the same thing as interest, but you're looking at fixed payments that you might have, payments on the principal portion of payments that you would make. Kind of already looked at that. Types of ratios, again, I'm going to kind of get through some of this. Some of the calculations you guys will be doing, right? And I think this is posted. If not, you know, you guys could come and look at some of these pretty basic calculations that you're going to do. DuPont, again, it just kind of breaks down all those ratios, puts them into a systematic thing, which is good. Some comparisons there. That one I wasn't terribly. Asset utilization is huge. You'll get, like I said, the return on assets, return on inventory, those types of things, accounts receivable, et cetera, et cetera. You'll be doing some of those. Liquidity, current. What's working capital? That's not in here, but current assets minus current liabilities. Again, huge, huge thing. Big number, important number. So what I wanted to get to here and just show you a couple things. So we're talking about 3 different kind of computer companies, right? IBM's the old standard, Dell, Apple. Just come down to the bottom just as an example here. So IBM's profit margin is 15.8, okay? So that's their profit on sales, right? So if they have $100 worth of sales, they make $15.80. Apple's profit margin is 26.9. Not quite double, but significantly higher, right? So that means if they have $100 worth of sales, they make $26.90. But IBM's return on equity is 70.5. That's huge. And Apple's is only 35. Okay, less than half. Why? These are the things that you ought to think about as you're going through profitability or ratio analysis. okay? It's, to me, at first glance, and I'm about 100% sure that would be the reason, is what did I tell you about Apple last week in terms of their balance sheet? What do they have a lot of? Cash. And cash is an asset, and they don't have a whole lot of liabilities. So that means Apple has a whole lot of equity, okay? IBM, when I look at this tells me that IBM's probably operating on a lot more leverage, meaning a lot more borrowed money. So if I were to look at these two, and this was back in 2012, so it'd be a little difficult to get back that far. You probably could. But if I were to look at it, I'd bet you, $1,000 right now that as of that year, IBM had significantly more debt to assets than Apple had, okay? It's probably true yet today, okay? But I'd bet you for sure in 2012 that was the case. And so those are the things that you pick up when you start doing ratio analysis and you really look at companies and you're kind of comparing them and you're trying to make sense of them, and they're really important. So this could be a good thing. I like a big return on equity. I said that, right? But when you have a high return, what's that also mean? You got higher risk. Okay, those two are almost always go hand in hand. Almost always. Let me rephrase that. Those always go hand in hand. Risk and return, are always go hand in hand. Okay, Apple, lots of cash, lots of assets, not much debt. Okay, that's kind of all I wanted to go over on that. But let me get you started a little bit on Project One and give you a little assignment for that. Okay. When you come to content, and you got to scroll down to get to Project One, and you click on that, and you'll see I got all kinds of things here. Probably the big one, I'll have to change the date on this, I will, but we got this copy of financial projections template, and I'm going to download it now, show it to you, because this is what you're going to be doing for Project One. So I'll just whip through it really quickly here. And I'll go through each of these statements individually and talk about them as the next couple of weeks go along, give you some ideas about what you want to do and whatnot. So these are, and the reason I kind of picked this is provided by SCORE, which is Service Corps Retired Executives. These are typically the kinds of statements that you'd look at, if you were a banker or if you were a CFO or something like that for a company. They're the types of things you would want to see in a company to recognize the profitability, recognize the net worth, the equity, those types of things that a company would have, okay? Very, very typical things. The first page, they call it starting point. We'd have called it, in my day at the bank, we called it sources and uses, kind of. Where are you going to get your money from at the startup of a company, and where are you going to spend it? Okay, that's basically it. Whip through these. Payroll, if you got some payroll. Sales forecasts. This sets it up pretty nicely to do a sales forecast. I'd tell you for some industries it gets to be a little more difficult, but we'll get into some of the details of that as we go along. Second and third year, it autofills. Here's the nice thing about this. You're looking at all kinds of blanks on here. It's going to autofill a whole lot of these blanks for you. As you fill out even that starting point, it's going to fill a lot of blanks in the subsequent statements, okay? So it looks maybe a little daunting now. It fills in a lot of it on its own. Additional inputs, that's just some things that can change about your company that are really important to put in there. Again, we'll talk about details when we get there. Operating expenses, this you'll spend a lot of time filling this in. You see orange you guys are going to fill in. A lot of the white will absolutely fill in. Here's a word of warning. Do not change any white cells in these spreadsheets. Okay, unless you absolutely ask me about 3 times if it's okay. Because if you start changing white cells, it's going to screw everything up, and basically I'm going to tell you go back and start over. Okay, so don't change white cells. There's been 1 or 2 exceptions periodically in the past, but that's really pretty rare. Okay, it's going to autofill your second and third year expenses. Cash flow, we talked about that. Cash flow is a big deal. Well, look at that. You got 4 lines you may enter. You're probably not going to put anything there. Probably will there. Probably not there. Probably not there. So you got one line that you may add some stuff to, another that's a maybe, but probably not. It's going to autofill years 2 and 3. You might have a little bit that you'll input there, not too much. It's going to give you an income statement. Notice that that's all white. Okay, so first rule, don't change any white cells. That means this is going to be completely autofilled for you. Okay, same with second and third years. Balance sheet. Now, we are going to change a couple of cells on the balance sheet, but we'll get to that. It's all white, okay, because I'm going to have you change something on the additional inputs that makes a change here. So we are going to change those. We'll do that right in class. I'm going to make you do it while I'm sitting here so I can come around and look at everybody's. Okay, make sure it's all done correctly. Okay, so your first assignment for project 1 is this. Okay, it's relatively simple. Think of a small business type that you might like to start. Okay, because that's what you will do these financial forms for. Okay, first piece of advice, keep it simple. Okay, just keep it really, really simple. You know, if you wanted to start a hair salon, don't think about starting one that's got 8 chairs in it and you're going to lease 8 of the chairs and have 2 of the chairs yourself and la-da-da-da-da-da, right? You know, why not just do one? Okay, it's this. These forms make it extremely easy to scale up. So if you ultimately wanted to do a 10-chair salon, it's pretty easy to scale up after you finished one. Okay, you go back and refigure some things and it's pretty simple, okay? But it makes it a lot simpler if you start small and then build from there if you want to, okay? That'd be after class. I just want you to do this, keep it simple. Pick a relatively simple business. Service businesses are okay. If I want to do a cleaning, I want to get diesel and auto guys that do a mobile auto service or mobile diesel service or something, right? Those types of things are fine. Try to keep it kind of simple, and we'll go from there. Okay, so that's your first assignment is going to be tell me what kind of business you want to do. Okay, that's not obviously not in Connect, so that's going to be in Brightspace, and I think I've got a Dropbox set up for that. Like I said, I have to change the date, and I'll do that when I'm done talking here. Yeah, your business idea. So I got to change the date for that. We'll make that due, Thursday should be good. Okay, so I can get that. I just want to review those. I want to make sure you're on the right track. I want to make sure that, somebody's not going to try to build the Taj Mahal or something like that for this particular assignment. Because I want you to just keep it. It can be something that you're interested in, but try to scale it down if possible. Questions about that? Questions about chapter 3? Okay, I'm going to turn you loose. One more admonition. I can track up here how you're coming, on McGraw Hill and whatnot. So, if you want to leave early, have your stuff done. Okay, I want to see that you guys are working on stuff. It's been my experience through the years that I get people that show up and they get done listening to me and they like to get up and go, and then at the end of the year they get an F for the class, and I don't like that. So, I'd like to make sure that if you want to get your stuff done ahead of time and show up for class, listen to me talk for 10 minutes and leave. If you're done ahead of time, that may be okay. All right, I'm done talking. Let you guys get to work on those things.